Welcome to Put Up Your Spooks, a death-defying matchup of two macabre, horrific, or otherwise spooky shows. In this corner, wearing the baggy knee-length trunks, 90s reboot, Are You Afraid of the Dark? And the challenger in the throwback thigh-high short shorts, 80s reboot, Creepshow! This week's theme,
Reboots.
And joining us today is our special guest, Drew Weary.
Hey, what's up? I'm Drew Weary.
I have the pleasure of telling you guys about the very first episode of Creepshow. I'm going to focus on the first story, which was definitely the spotlight, a tale called Gray Matter, written by Stephen King, starring Giancarlo Esposito, Tobin Bell, and Adrienne Barbeau, and directed by Greg Nicotero. Giancarlo Esposito was Gus Fring in Breaking Bad. Tobin Bell was none other than Jigsaw from the Saw movies. And Adrienne Barbeau, well, she was from my Japanese class. True story, Adrienne-san, as we call her, was one of the other students in the Japanese language class that my wife and I were taking.
Save it for LA Stories on the 6 Demon Bag podcast.
All right, moving on. The episode begins, like they all do, with a comic book style introduction. And we see
a slow, ponderous...
We see illustrated view of the Earth, saying that the Earth's population has like doubled and reached 6 billion, and also that there's like a storm raging in this
doubled
town.
And reached 3 billion.
3.8 billion.
So,
which was very strange,
yeah,
because I don't know if this happened, if this story was set a million years in the past.
I think we figured it.
It was. Holy shit, did we
It's
just
a different
crack this
planet?
Wide open?
I don't think so. Unless time is circular.
I think it was 70s.
The current population of the Earth is 7.53 billion.
It's actually a relief because I thought it was way higher.
And in 1972, it was 3.84 billion. Okay.
So it's the 70s. Okay, Drew was correct.
I got excited because I thought it was like a throwback to before.
A throwback to before our modern history where they had beers and Studebakers, and it's sort of like Lord of the Rings. But
Yeah, because the beers were like in food cans.
That's true. Well, I was thinking if the population was 4 billion less, maybe it was so far back in time that actually it was some prehistoric age with some other civilization, and then that's the origin story of life was this weird thing that happened.
I kind of thought it was, when I first watched it, I thought it was maybe like a post-apocalypse type of thing, because they were hunkered down in this horrible, like, shitty store that had no supplies,
and
storms
everyone was
were
gone
raging
because the storm was raging.
Everything was boarded up and stuff.
Yeah.
So that was where I was coming at it from.
All right. Everything's boarded up. The town is half flooded out and abandoned. People have evacuated, and there's some old-timers hanging out in a general store. And we see a kid in a yellow slicker who has bravely made his way out to the general store, and he passes a bunch of missing pet posters. And when he gets inside, there's a newspaper with a headline about some missing twin girls. So he's there to buy some beer for his dad.
All we got left is cat and dog food.
Do you have any Harrow Supreme, Mrs. Parmalee?
For your daddy. I'll go get it.
And Adrienne-san pulls out some beer, some Harrow's Supreme, and the box is all slimy and gross, but he wants the beer, but he doesn't want to go back because he says that his dad is changing. So the power goes out, and the sheriff immediately starts talking about all this kind of crazy, creepy spookiness stuff, like, One time I met this guy who saw a thing in the sewer. I'm talking about Pennywise the Clown from the movie It. It's a Stephen King story tie-in. You see? Get it? So the sheriff and Giancarlo agreed to go and bring the beer to his dad because they think his dad has become
Just
a
an
violent alcoholic or something like that. So while they're out of the picture, the kid is explaining to Adrienne that back when his mom died, his dad started hitting the beer hard, and he drank like day and night, weeks and months in a row, and eventually he got fired. But then he made his living as a professional drinker. Like, he earned his money from drinking contests,
Right.
which
So,
is a really
possible.
thin way to just paper over a plot hole. Like, you could just say he was on unemployment.
Right.
But no, he had to keep drinking because that's how they made their money.
Wait, were these the Nixon years? Maybe there was no unemployment.
Yeah, maybe. So this goes on for way too long until finally, like, months into this binge drinking, he gets his first can of beer that is covered with some, like, gross gray slime. So after that, the dad starts turning gray. He's drinking a case of beer a day. He tells his son to cover all the windows. He starts cranking up the heat. And then one day, the kid finds his dad covered in a blanket, and he's all slimy and bubbly. And it's, for my money, the best image and the best part of the story. And the kid's like, "Dad, I want you to stop drinking." And the dad's like, "Do it. Give me my beer or I'll touch you, and you'll be just like me." So, in short order, he starts getting hungry and hungrier. He starts eating pets, and his son is like bringing him, food and pets and beer. As he's telling Adrian all this, the sheriff and Giancarlo are in the house now, and it's hot and dark, and it looks like there's other apartments that have had their doors busted down, and there's no one inside, and there's like moss and fungus kind of dripping from the ceiling. Everything's a mess and covered in like poop and grossness. And when they go into the kitchen, they smell something terrible, and they find the dissolved remains of the two twin girls that had gone missing. And the boy confesses that to feed his father's growing appetites, he started bringing people. And the reason why he went to the general store that night was not just to get beer, but to find more people to feed to his mutated father, because the storm had driven everyone out of town, and his father's appetite had to be sated. So, Dad comes out. He's a big gray slime monster, and he eats the sheriff.
The sheriff jams his gun into his belly, shoots him a bunch of times, then the monster sucks him into his stomach hole.
Yes. So he's just like a big amoeba, kind of. He's turned this big goopy bacterial creature, and he sucks the sheriff in and then starts to divide into two giant slime monsters. Hard cut back to the general store. And Giancarlo is running around raving about the monster dividing and how they got to get out of there. And Adrian is tabulating something on like an old style adding machine.
Adding machine.
And what she's doing is she's tabulating exponential growth. And she kind of shoehorns in this weird monologue about how they only have 6 days because at the rate their father is dividing, pretty soon he'll be big enough to devour the whole world's population.
At this rate, it's 6 days!
6 days! 6 days to what?
The end of everything!
So I guess we finally know why they opened the episode with a population statistic.
Yeah.
And then, boom, monster busts into the roof and drags Giancarlo away.
Yeah.
The end.
It was pretty bad.
It was terrible.
Pretty slow.
It was slow,
weird
bad.
acting.
It was such a murderer's row of talent, and it was such a bad episode.
Somehow it wasn't scary. The set design of that guy's like mossy gross house was very good
at the end,
but the way they lit it made it look more cold to me. It didn't look like a hot tropical environment. So that was weird. They just kept saying, "Oh, it's so hot in here," but they were also like bundled in their coats.
Yeah, because they just like forged through a hurricane to get there,
and there was no like steam in the air or anything
right.
like that.
And also, it wasn't important that the hurricane was going on.
Not important. It wasn't important that it was hot in there.
It wasn't important that it was hot, other than just a good environment for bacterial growth.
Right. I didn't understand whether it was the beer that was transforming him into a monster, or whether he was just transforming into a monster who really liked beer, and whether it was because of his transformation that the beer can got slimy, or whether there was something in it.
So in the short story, which is very good.
That's usually the case with Stephen King adaptations.
There's some bacteria into the beer.
Okay.
And then this kid's father and his friends are drinking the beer. They get colonized by this bacteria. And they keep drinking beer because beer is made of yeast. And it's like a perfect medium for growing and feeding bacteria. And they start melting and becoming these gross, oozy monsters. Right. So it's a great short story. But for the TV show, they tacked on the general store plot.
Oh, that wasn't in the short story? That's bizarre.
Not at all. Not that I remember. And, it's so poorly written. Out of the blue, they're talking about the storm, and they're like, last time I saw a storm like this was 1956. That was about the time your wife up and left you, wasn't it? Well, it's a good thing my wife left me, because now I get to hang out with you every night.
In this post-apocalypse.
In this rundown general store.
Pre-apocalypse.
Everything was so hacky and...
Yeah.
Whew.
I get the feeling they did not have a lot of time to make this series, or a lot of budget, certainly. Although the monster was pretty fucking cool.
Right. That was the one...
There was one,
right?
the one where he was wrapped up in the blanket was cool. When he turned into CG by the end, it wasn't as good, obviously. Right. But there was also one really cool shot when Giancarlo or Esposito, or however you pronounce it, was in the general store at the end running around, and you could see his shadow on the wall, and his shadow divided from the kid's shadow. So yeah, it looked like how that was a creative way to shoot something without using CG and stuff. So I appreciated it.
Creative. It gave you an idea that they were worried about exponential multiplication.
Yeah.
But it was a smash cut to it while he was screaming.
Yeah.
While Adrian was clacking away on the adding machine.
I also didn't notice it the first time, and I thought it was a creative way to show something without having people going, "Oh no, this is going to happen," and then this is going to... Although it also happened while they were doing
it. It's like they made 10 choices all at once, and they gave you 5 seconds to process it. It's very low budget. Mm-hmm. It's definitely a labor of love that you have all these famous actors and directors coming in.
I guess so.
And there's one element in each episode where they're spending all their money on. So that gives it that sort of 80s kind of schlock feel.
You know, it's also weird. You said this episode was directed by
Greg Nicotero.
Greg Nicotero?
Yeah.
It had none of... So, when he directs Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes, they're, really kind of experimental and weird. And this didn't have any of that.
You mean Walking Dead?
What did I say?
Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Oh, yeah, Walking Dead. When he directs Walking Dead episodes, they're very experimental and weird.
They're either experimental.
Maybe he just got that out of his system.
They take
or
chances.
Artsy, yeah.
They're artsy. They make choices, or they're very yeoman-like. Here it was just a hot mess. Now, obviously, Greg Nicotero is probably working on 1,000 things at once, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I also want to do Creepshow."
He probably worked on the original Creepshow.
He may have, but the end result was just bad script, bad episode.
Sorry, Creepshow.
Now, after that, for those of you who, kept watching, there was a little episode called The House of the Head. And it was about a little girl who has this awesome dollhouse, and then one day she finds this weird little gross demonic zombie head inside of it. And the zombie head is menacing the little toy family of dolls that lives in the house. And every time she looks away, these different tableaus, the little dioramas, the family has moved, or they're all huddled in terror, or they're all reacting in fear, or looking up the stairs into the dark shadows where this demonic head is roaming around. And, she gets a policeman figure and puts it in to protect the family. The policeman gets killed. she goes out and gets Native American. That little doll gets its head and hand chopped off, and eventually the whole family gets wiped out while she's watching, and she gets so terrified that she gets rid of the house. I mean, that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
But after that shit show of the first story, I was like so enamored with House of the Head. It was shot so well. It was so simple. It was so well framed. I loved the cinematography. That actress who plays the little girl was probably like half the age of the boy in Gray Matter.
Oh,
but
she was way better than him.
Twice as good of an actor. Yeah, everything about it was just so much better.
Yeah, I didn't. I thought it was like pretty great, except it would have been a great YouTube short, like a 5-minute short. But it was stretched out over 20 minutes.
Feel like it was. It moved,
and
it was
didn't
pretty
have
short.
any kind of arc or anything. It just killed everyone, and then she sold the house.
It had no resolution. That was my complaint. Is that the ending?
Yeah. The great irony of it is that I felt like it was too long and drawn out, and it would have worked better as a YouTube short. But if it had been a YouTube short, it would have been bought by a studio and developed into a feature, which then would have been insanely long and drawn out. So it's probably the best we could have expected.
Look, next year Blumhouse is going to come out.
They'll still do
House
it.
in the Head.
But yeah, I don't understand why she never told her parents about that evil head. She was like 8 years old. She would have gone straight to her parents at first. I mean, the doll maker made some crack about we never know what they're thinking, but that's really more teens.
I don't know why she wasn't more freaked out. I mean, you're looking from room to room, and these things are moving on their own. And is everything okay in there? Yeah, Mama. Yep. Yeah, I got this.
Yeah, no sense.
I think what they were trying to dial into was that she was at that age of kind of make-believe and magical thinking where she had this family of dolls living in this magnificent dollhouse, and she gave them all names, and in her mind, they were kind of alive the way your imaginary friends or your stuffed animals are alive. So when this evil head shows up, it confused her, but she just accepted it the way a child accepts things. And she, in her own little sort of make-believe world, she was trying to solve the problem instead of pulling all the way out and being like, Mom, Dad, there's a problem with my doll family.
I guess so. I mean, that makes sense, except the fact that the family was constantly in her business and poking their noses into the dollhouse and stuff, and watching the tableaus move, except just missing it. And she was getting scared, but she still never sought help from anyone.
Kids keep secrets, man.
It was weird. And the parents, the way they were written and shot, it seemed like they had some sort of weird back agenda. They were trying. It was almost like there was a whole backstory, maybe the kid had been misbehaving, and they were trying to because they were like, don't forget about our mother-daughter date. We love you. Remember always that we love you. Let's do movie night. Let's have popcorn.
I feel like,
oh, how was school today, my little lovin' stuffs?
I feel like they were literally a framing device around, everything outside of the dollhouse was perfect.
Yeah, but they kept giving each other sidelong glances and stuff.
Because she was acting kind of strange.
I guess.
They could tell she was upset about something.
Maybe they were just trying to treat her with kid gloves.
Starting to act erratically, and they're like, why does she want to get a priest doll to put in the house?
Yeah, a lot of subtext in this episode.
Yeah. Honestly, the mom and dad had significantly less screen time than these dolls in the house.
Yeah.
So all they could do was kind of show up, poke around, ask her if she was doing okay. I liked how in real life, the house, they used a lot of cool colors, a lot of blues and greens and blacks. And when they were inside the dollhouse, everything was kind of warm and reds and oranges and yellows. It was a really interesting reversal.
Mm.
It's like the house almost had more life in it than the rest of her life. I thought it was really well done, except for the ending where they just
It's gone. We're done.
We don't have an ending, so
Yeah.
we're just going to drop it.
Yeah,
Like, what
after
the
they
fuck?
head into their bedroom, I just assuming that they were going to start killing off her parents too.
Yeah.
I think that would have happened if she had not exiled the head and the house.
No more. No more of the head.
The Are You Afraid of the Dark reboot. 3-episode miniseries, which all was one story. And they did something which Are You Afraid of the Dark never did except for once at the very end of the series, which was involve the Midnight Society in the stories. So there's this girl, Rachel. She's new in town, Argento, Oregon. You know, it's like a drab, rainy kind of a feeling. It's like very realistic, not very stylish at all until we get to the 3rd episode. But it's like pretty straight. All the characters are pretty straight.
It opens with the nightmare sequence where Rachel is running through a school and she's being chased by a man with a top hat, and she sees a little girl that's been captured.
We get this mom and daughter driving, and the mom is like completely in a different show from every other character. She's like a manic, insane.
She thought she was in a Nickelodeon show.
She thought she was in a Nickelodeon show, sitcom. Like, she sat down and watched, like, Camp Rock or whatever. I don't know, that might be a Disney Channel show, but I swear I don't know. But, like, she was like, hey, we're moving to a new town. I believe in you. Look at this cute boy over here. Why don't you get him to go on a date? And Rachel was like, Mom, I'm fine.
Mom, try to read the tone of the script.
Yeah, but thank God the mom was not in much of the series, because it was really distracting and strange.
I mean, that young man was a real Timothy Chalamet. Did I say that name right?
She goes to school, and some weird dweeb tries to, like, hit on her immediately.
Which is what does happen every time a cute new girl moves to a school.
I guess, especially in fiction. Nobody ignores them, certainly, as you would. And her teacher makes her stand up in front of the whole school and tell her, or in front of the whole class and tell them who she is and stuff, which also always happens in real life.
Well, in every episode of every show we've reviewed from the 90s, there's a new kid who has to stand up in front of the class and introduce themselves.
Certainly in the world of movies and television, when there's a new student, they have to get up in front of the class and introduce themselves. I've never seen it happen in real life, but hey, what do I know?
I saw it happen once with Madeline Helty, who had immigrated to America.
Oh, well, that's a slightly different story, because she at least had like some interesting cultural thing to maybe talk about, or maybe the teacher was trying to enrich the rest of the class.
She was from Sweden, and so they had to give us a heads up.
Yeah.
Don't say anything insensitive about Sweden.
I've never seen it happen like at the beginning of class, but I have seen it at like during roll call, where they'll have the students stand up at their desk and basically pointing at her saying, yeah, this is so-and-so, try to be nice, you can sit down, and then going back on as if nothing happened.
You done messed up, Ron.
Man, insensitive.
Yeah.
That dweeb goes away. She goes to class, they intro her, and she's like drawing, she spends the whole class drawing a picture of this guy from her evil dream.
That's why it's important
Mr.
that she had a
Top Hat.
dream.
Which she apparently does just constantly. She's always drawing pictures of Mr. Top Hat, this weird character. She's always talking about him, thinking about him, even though she's frightened of it. Perhaps that's her therapy. And this guy behind her, some other creep, is like looking over her shoulder, watching her draw. He notices she's got skull earrings and she's drawing a creepy picture. And before that, she mentioned that she had seen the movie The Changeling, which is absolute horseshit. These kids have never heard of The Changeling. I don't care how many spooky stories they tell each other. I just watched The Changeling because I saw like a description of it on Shudder, which I had started a trial of to watch Creepshow. And I was like, ooh, that sounds interesting. I'll watch that. And I watched it the other night, and it wasn't until today, like 3 days later, that I realized I'd already watched it. So I went into my Netflix queue and I saw that I had rented it in 2014. Anyway, long story short, these kids who were born in 2002 never saw The Changeling.
Well, you just saw it. Don't judge these kids by the same harsh metric. Maybe they're just...
They never even heard of The Changeling. How could they even possibly have heard of The Changeling?
Well,
that was
heard of The Changeling
that was a
because
writer
that's all they
my
talk about.
age inserting something they liked into a teen's life, and it rang false, my friend. Much like Mr. Top Hat's whole MO.
And these kids are just real
no,
deal
I've actually
Holyfield
seen the
horror
Changeling.
fans. Yeah, you saw yesterday.
Anyways, and in 2014.
You liked it so much you forgot it.
So they realize. So this kid, the creeper who has a horrible germophobia, which also never comes up in any significant way in the series, steals her drawing out of the trash and goes to his wicked, mega hot, super awesome cheerleader friend who won't talk to him because he's kind of a dork, even though
he's a real Stig character.
He's a real Stig. He when he first gets off the bus, his intro scene is like he gets off the bus, he jams his head in some headphones, and he's listening to like cool ass tunes.
He uses some antibiotic.
He uses some hand sanitizer.
Sanitizer.
Then he gets off the bus and he's just grooving to the beat of his own drummer. He's like dodging footballs and like he doesn't give a shit. But he's the horrible geek who nobody will talk to unless they're secretly in the woods at midnight.
He's the horror nerd.
Yeah. Well, they all are, but they don't. I like that the other kids don't want to admit that they're horror nerds because I felt the same way when I was in school.
So you like that kids are living a shame-based
Well, that part
lie?
was very true to life.
Shame is important for teenagers.
Yeah. So anyway, he goes to his wonderful cheerleader friend and who talks to him under the bleachers, and they're like, "Oh, yo, we got this new recruit. I think this is going to be good." She says, "Let's go talk to Akiko, who's like a little director nerd who's making a zombie film." And she's like, "Okay, whatever. Invite her to take the challenges." So they start dropping notes in her locker with like test questions, and she has to write her responses. They're dropping them all in her locker, and she has to drop them off anonymously. And then the last one, they say, "Okay, you've passed the test. Meet us in the dark woods at midnight, alone, and don't tell anybody." And she's like, "Okay, that sounds good." So even in these modern times, it's apparently. So she goes into the woods late at night, and she gets accosted by a bunch of psychos in masks with gigantic flaming torches. Luckily, it's Oregon, so it's probably pretty rainy there. And they like trip her up in the middle of the woods, and they're like in the background, like whispering all creepily, like, "Oh, get her, kill her, rip her face off," and whatever. And she's like, "Lose this, I'm out of here." But then they get her and they surround her and they're like, "Okay, come back here tomorrow night." I'm just kidding. None of these kids are Canadian, which is a real bummer. "And tell us a scary story. You have 24 hours only." So she goes home and then she's like racking her brains for the next day. Instead of drawing in class, she's writing her story all through class. This kid, Gavin, who lives next to her and who her mom has the real hots for.
I mean, that young man was a real Timothy Chalamet. Did I say that name right?
Walks her to school and is like, "Hey, what you doing? Why'd you get home late at night?" And she won't tell him because she's not supposed to tell anybody, but he gives her a good inspiration for how to write a scary story. So she writes her story, meets them back in the woods at midnight, and she tells her story of the Mr. Top Hat and the Carnival of Doom. And it's about a little girl who goes to a carnival, and they go to the ticket counter, and the clown has no eyes. Except when he does have eyes. They go to the big tent, which Jeff has a real problem with because it should be called the Big Top.
It is the Big Top.
And
that is the proper
Carney terminology. Mr. Top Hat.
We're forgetting this little girl liked to be scared, even though the carnival was scary.
Yes, and even her parents, much like House of the Head's parents, are like, "Hey, we love you. You're great. Everything's wonderful. We are very stereotypical, weird archetypes."
Is there something you want to put out there about your mom and dad? Are you having a fight with them right now?
No, my parents were real. My parents had their problems. Unlike these squeaky clean weirdo parents and all these shows we're watching.
And these goddamn YouTubers.
Except for the beer swilling guy.
Shorts.
He was the realest of all. Especially when he turned into a slime monster.
Enough said.
So they go into the big tent, and Mr. Top Hat comes out, and he's all show. His like catchphrase is, "It's all part of the show." I guess to lull everyone into a false sense of security, because we will find out it's not all part of the show. He pops up behind the little girl. Scares are good. And then she has to go to the bathroom, and her mom's like, "Do you want me to go with you?" And she's like, "No, I'll be fine." And then the mom's like, "Okay, cool." Wander off into this dark carnival all by herself. In the 80s, I would have said, or in the 90s, yeah, that mom totally would have done that, because that's what parents did back then. Nowadays, no sir. Although I suppose that was the past from now, but it was still probably like 2000. So things were getting a lot safer.
Probably
around the year
2010.
2010.
But in the mom's defense, it was the Carnival of Doom.
It was the Carnival of Doom, and she was real happy-go-lucky.
Yeah.
So the little girl wanders off by herself, and she just wanders down a space between two tents, and Mr. Top Hat is just sitting there on a stool doing nothing. And then some scorpion comes out of his pants, and he eats it. And then she gets really...
That's not a euphemism. It may be a metaphor.
A real scorpion comes out of his pants and he really eats it. Yeah, it could be, I guess. There could be some subtext to this as well. And then more scorpions come out of his pants, and then she runs away, and she encounters two bullies from her school. She says, "Don't go down that way." And they're like, "We're not scared." And they go, and then they disappear. And on the news the next day, it says 2 girls were missing. And she says to her parents, "Whoa, those are the 2 girls I saw at the carnival." And they're like, "What? What carnival?" And they don't remember the Dark Carnival of Doom. Rachel says that the little girl eventually also forgot the Carnival of Doom as the years went on. And then her story's over. And it's really a kind of a shitty story. It doesn't it's not even a story. And it's so boring and unscary that they have to constantly cut out to the Midnight Society saying, "I'm so scared right now, oh!" But when her story's finished being told, they're like, "Okay, yeah, cool, you're in. Great story." So then the next day in school, or a couple days later, it doesn't really matter, the teacher's like, "Hey, I got something fun to show you," and he hands out flyers for the Carnival of Doom, and they're all like...
As teachers often do.
Of course, yeah. Again, definitely something that happens... in real life.
It's just cooler in Oregon. The teacher's like, "Hey guys, can I hip you to this Carnival of Doom that's coming through?"
Okay, but before that, the weird dweeb Adam who hit on her in the very beginning is walking his dog, and the carnival is setting up on his dog walking route, and he vanishes. He's not there to join Rachel at lunch, so she's very sad about that. So then they get the flyers for the Carnival of Doom, and they're all freaking out. They're like, "Whoa, it's just like your story. This is crazy." So that's basically episode 1 ends. They realize the carnival is real. And then the rest of the series, Rachel gathers them in a special meeting and says, like, if this is the real carnival, they take kids, and Adam is missing, the dweeb who tried to hit on me, and so I really want to go and try and save him. And the rest of the guys it's actually kind of a funny moment. They go, "Oh, that makes me want to go even less." And then they leave. But then she guilt trips Gavin, and he convinces the rest of them to go to the carnival. They go to the carnival. It's spooky. They leave the carnival because the goddamn Carnival of Doom closes at 10 p.m. They go home, and then the next day, none of the Midnight Society remembers the carnival. The mom doesn't remember the carnival. Mr. Top Hat comes to her in her dreams, and he's like telling her she better fucking leave well enough alone or he's going to wring her scrawny little neck. His exact words. She gives them another speech again and is like, "Adam's there. You got to come back to the carnival with me. We got to save him, blah, blah, blah." They get Akiko's brother to come. He's a cop. They get their cell phones stolen because Akiko's taking video of him, and he's invisible in the videos, so they get chased down by creepy clowns, which is kind of a good part. And then in the last episode, they finally shove in some backstory for Mr. Top Hat. He was like a regular old carnival dude whose ride killed a bunch of people, and then he made a deal with the devil. His only thing was his dad was like a fuck up who couldn't do anything right, so he wanted to give the people something they could remember, something that was a legacy. So then he made a deal with the devil, and the stipulation of the deal was you can have this power and you can get the best carnival ever, but no one will ever remember it. And he was like, "That sounds good. That's exactly what I was going for." And he makes the deal with the devil, and he has to eat scorpions, I guess.
From his pants, no less.
Pants. And they go back to the carnival again because they track Akiko's phone, which is in Idaho. And so they convince the cop brother to drive them to Idaho, which is like a 9 to 10 hour drive from Oregon, depending on where you are. I mapped it this morning.
Nice.
And he's like, "Okay, cool." And they fucking drive all the way over there. And before they go in, the number 2 man, Bartholomew, grabs them and he's like, "Mr. Top Hat's gotta go, y'all. I'm gonna tell you exactly how to kill him. The power's in his top hat, and you can only destroy it by fire. Now go." And he gives them a map of the carnival and stuff, so they go in. Rachel finds the way into the secret inner sanctum, but it's just the big tent, a.k.a. Big Top. And Mr. Top Hat's there, and he's like, "Fuck you, it was a trap." And the hat It's not powerful at all. They just call me that for no reason. Oh, the cane is the source of my power, though. And yes, he was telling you correctly that it can be destroyed by fire. So in springing the trap, they actually give them all the actual information that they need to destroy the Carnival of Doom, which is counter to their plans. I think everything really fell apart in episode 3. And then they get the cane and they run away and they're getting spooked left and right.
And the reason why Mr. Top Hat is stalking and harassing Rachel
is because
there was a prophecy that
the devil, in making the bargain, told him. Mr. Top Hat says, "What's the catch?" And the devil says, "Well, one day there's going to be a girl who remembers." That's pretty much it.
Was that girl the offspring of
It turned out that Rachel was the little girl from her story and the dreams, and she and her parents went to the Carnival of Doom. She remembered it for a while, but then forgot it eventually. But subconsciously she remembered it. Yes, the people who got killed in the original ride, there was one survivor, and it was her great-great-great-great-grandmother or something. And at one point Brandon Ruth shows up, and her mom hits on him.
That was so weird. What was that about?
It was about nothing. It was about Brandon Ruth needed $100 to eat dinner, I guess. Maybe he was a fan. Anyway, they get Top Hat's cane, but he kidnaps all their friends, and she can't smash it, so they end up outside in the rain, and he's like, "I'll kill all your friends unless you give me my cane back." And she's like, "What can you do with this cane?" And he says, "Anything." So she uses the cane to like electrocute all his cronies and like blast them back with crazy energy waves, and then she throws it in the fire. And Mr. Top Hat melts into dust, but he's psyched because he says, "You'll remember this forever." So he finally kind of got what he wanted.
It's all he wanted was to be remembered.
To be remembered. Shouldn't have made that deal with the devil. I mean, people would have remembered him killing a bunch of people with this first carnival ride.
True.
So, boom, legacy right there.
But just remember, everyone, it's all part of the
Show.
The first time we watched it, we all enjoyed it. We watched the first 2 parts. And then we watched the third part a couple of days later on Halloween night, and the third part was weird, had a totally different energy, like felt like it came from a different director, even though it didn't.
Yeah, the whole style was so jarringly different. It really took me out of it.
But I thought it was fine the first time I watched it. The second time I was like, this is such a mess, such a sloppy mess. And I'm going to elucidate. So I love that it's a show that celebrates writing and storytelling. I think that's really fun and a little praised activity, pastime. Maybe not so much now, but like back in the day, if you were into that kind of stuff, you were a total nerd. Although these kids are total nerds and outcasts and stuff, at least amongst their own friend group. Mr. Top Hat is a real problematic character to me, not because he's like super rapey against children, but because he doesn't do anything. He doesn't have anything that he wants. He doesn't have... all he does is conscript kids to work in his carnival, but all his carnival workers are immortal. So he doesn't need new workers. We don't know what he's doing with them. He eats scorpions, so he doesn't need to eat their souls.
We find out that his motivation is to track down the prophesized child who can destroy the...
Right. And then even he can't lock down whether he wants to destroy her or team up with her or just have them go their separate ways.
Yeah, his motivation was weak,
super
and
weak,
murky.
He was just kind of a hipster goober who like raved a lot.
Yeah, I guess if you subsist on a diet of scorpions from your pants, it will muddle your thinking.
I suppose so. Yeah. Along those lines, I wondered why the Carnival of Doom would need robots. Why would they need android, robot, animatronic zombies if they have magic?
Yeah.
They specifically cut to a close-up of something beeping on those robot zombies to let you know that they're robots when they slowly sink back into the water in the tunnel of love.
I think that was sort of a visual shorthand that what you thought was a real zombie attack was just all part of the show.
All part of the show.
That's when they were still kind of playing with the viewer expectation.
Yeah,
exactly. It was for the audience.
I don't know if that tracks really when you think about it after the fact. Because especially since everyone forgets everything after they leave the carnival. Oh, this really doesn't make a difference, but as an example of the kind of sloppiness of the narrative, at one point she realizes that Gavin is missing because he was supposed to walk her to school. And she's like, and her mom doesn't remember the carnival. So she goes, "Mom, you have to drive me to school now." Cut to, she's at school, she meets all of her friends, and they don't remember the carnival. and the next shot is her riding a bicycle with a helmet to the carnival, which has disappeared. I was like, yo, where the hell did she get that bike? Did she just steal that bike?
Yeah.
And helmet? That's a lice risk, if nothing else.
Maybe a couple of the kids who've been snatched by the carnival just
left
had
their
their
bikes behind. And in
at
Argento,
school.
Oregon, nobody bothers to lock their bikes up.
Or maybe
I
they
thought
have
that
a
was
bike. They have
really funny.
a robust bike share system.
Perhaps. It was something I didn't notice at first, but when I was like really analyzing it, I was like, what the fuck, dude? You can't have her mom drive her to school in one scene and then the next scene have her riding a bike with a bike helmet that fits.
And that is such a small thing to throw you
Yeah, but it's like
in such a fantastical, magical world.
I wonder... Yeah, but she doesn't have the wand. Only Mr. Top Hat can create magic.
Again, it's
that's
a minor quibble.
That reeks to me of like they just didn't really care that much. They were like, "Fuck it, like it's a kids show. We don't care."
It's possible.
Just have her grab a
it's
bike
possible
so she can get out to
took
the carnival.
bus home
She should have
and
taken
then
an Uber.
got on her bike.
No, because she runs out of the school and is rifling through the bike rack.
Yeah. Well,
They had that shot in there. They bothered to do that. Lazy filmmaking. Get a script supervisor. Oh, I thought it was funny when she goes to her first lunch at school. There's so many stereotypes in this. I couldn't believe it. The kids are like, fuck you, you can't sit here. They're like sliding their trays across to block her from access. Again, I guess it's just the kind of shorthand that you need when you're telling
it's the shorthand they use for telling stories to kids.
Oh my god.
But it is kind of funny that when you cast a show on TV, you usually choose good-looking guys and girls. And the idea that a girl who's pretty enough to be the lead in a TV show shows up to a new school and everyone is like, fuck
Get away from
you.
me.
Get out.
Yeah.
You can't sit here. It's like, I seem to remember when I was a teenager, if a really attractive girl showed up at school with no friends, I'd be into it.
I probably would have been more like Adam Dweeb and like tried to kindly open her locker for her and failed.
Yes.
But I would have been too scared to even try that, so I wouldn't have even gone over there. My last note, Akiko, who is the super filmmaking, crazy, passionate filmmaker, calls werewolf movies a genre. They are a subgenre at the very most.
Well, perhaps she's so hardcore.
God damn it,
that
Akiko.
to her, subgenres are genres.
Stupid little tween.
Jesus.
Get your shit together. Or you're never going to make it in this town. It'll eat you alive. So, reboot of Are You Afraid of the Dark? I don't know. I mean, we had a good time watching it. Don't watch it a second time. That's all. And maybe skip the last episode.
I mean, the last episode is where all the money is.
It's where everything happens.
And that's the part where I fell asleep.
Yep. Yep.
I was like, ooh, and then what happened? She had the wand, she was shooting stuff.
That's a wrap, everyone. Great work today.
Let's put up your spooks and review the reboot of Are You Afraid of the Dark versus Creepshow. Body count.
Are we counting, like, enslaved bodies or dead bodies?
Dead bodies.
Okay, then 0 bodies in Are You Afraid of the Dark?
But what about
Mr. Top Hat?
Mr. Top Hat and all of his cronies.
Rachel's great-great-grandmother?
Okay, fair enough.
People who
okay,
died
so that's
on
like 5.
Body count for Creepshow was 3 billion.
No,
Yes.
because we've established that this was not a post-apocalypse.
No,
This was a
but
pre-apocalypse.
the monster was dividing, and in 6 days,
Yeah, but
he
it
would
didn't
grow.
happen yet. It was only implied.
In
You can count
6
cats and dogs, though.
In 6 days, he was going to be
Body count,
big enough to devour 3 billion people.
body count, 3.8 billion beers.
That's a lot of dead soldiers.
They didn't count on the rate of banging going on in third world countries, because it is high, and the population is going to explode way before that guy can drink enough beers to devour. I didn't actually like the fact that he was born by beers, but then he had a hunger for flesh. Because he didn't eat anything until he turned into a monster.
That felt like a weird changeover. Yeah. Okay, scare factor.
Scare factor, they had a couple of good scares in Are You Afraid of the Dark. There was one scene where Akiko's brother showed up in the mirror and he was like, help me. It was it was weird because it was super slick, and I think they honestly shot it so that they could get a really good trailer. Because when I saw the trailer in the theater, I was like, ugh. that's way like slick in Hollywood. What the fuck is this shit? But then it was long and drawn out. It was a one short story, again, over 3 40-minute episodes.
Yeah.
So it was a little dull. I don't know. What do you think, Drew? Was it scary?
No.
Scorpion pants are pretty scary. It's
Scare-
like a portable boo box
Scare
for
fact-
your junk.
Boo. Scare factor for gray matter was also quite low.
Oh, yeah,
just
ultra
because
low.
it was so predictable.
And it was just long and
It was
boring.
long, slow, boring. They forecast everything way in advance.
Yeah, there were like 4 scenes of the sheriff and the guy just wandering around the house before they even found anything.
Yeah, for me, the only thing that had any effect that moved the needle at all was when the father was covered with the blanket and slimy
awesome.
and burbling.
It made me yearn for those days, like the 80s, and when they were doing like practical shit like that.
Right, it
because
was
like I'm sure
practical effect, gross factor.
Yeah, slime was good gross factor. Again, that was it though. I liked the corpses. They were like weird. They looked like melted wax or something.
They were
like he had
dissolved.
Kind of
Yeah.
Very Creepshow-y. Gross factor on Are You Afraid of the Dark was not that gross. It was pretty low.
I'd say
Scorpion pants.
Non-existent.
Yeah.
Give or take a scorpion. Okay.
The guy was like a germaphobe and he had to reach into the trash, which I guess was gross. But again, I was so bothered by the fact that his germophobia didn't help or hinder the story at all. Like they
Just
were
a
like,
bit of
oh, these
character
kids
flavor.
need character traits. He'll be a germaphobe.
Right.
No reason.
Well, no, he's the world's most confident horror fanatic. Also, he's a germaphobe. Hat on a hat. What the factor?
You know what? I'm going to go way low on Are You Afraid of the Dark.
They sort of forecast and broadcast everything so repetitively that there was no surprise that, oh, the top hat's real and whatever. I will say that with Creepshow, as slow and boring and obvious as everything was, the weird jump cut ending to Giancarlo raving and
yanked through the
Adrian on the adding machine, that was so weird.
So stupid.
And dumb. It threw me.
Higher.
I was like,
Certainly
what
higher.
is happening? What am I watching? What the factor? High on that part. Theme of reboot.
High for both.
I'd say maxed out for both. Although
120%.
Creepshow has got a second season.
Oh,
so that is a
might be
reboot
enough to edge it
with
out.
Legs.
Wow.
Are You Afraid of the Dark?
So I
Unclear.
think what we're seeing here is that once again, an inferior show has won on Put Up Your Spooks.
Hell yeah.
For all the complaining I've done about Are You Afraid of the Dark reboot, I do think it was superior to Spook Show reboot.
Creepshow.
Creepshow reboot.
Well, it's not a one-to-one comparison because Creepshow is a anthology
It's a true
series.
anthology, yeah. My favorite part of the Creepshow reboot is when they cut to the creep, and he's just a puppet that goes,
That got on my nerves so quick.
It's so funny. It's the same thing every time. And it sounds like Rob Schraub's doing the voice.
It does.
It's just like a weird puppet with teeth.
There's
that
an
goes,
animatronic puppet of the creeper. There's also a
cartoon
a
animated
fully
version.
animated,
I
as
didn't
in
like that one as
cartoon
much.
creeper, and all they ever do is
laughs
laugh
and chuckles.
All it does is laugh.
Well, because if they had him talk, then people would have been like, "Whoa, you're ripping off the Crypt Keeper."
Right.
Couldn't do that.
But I feel like if you have a character that just laughs, you can only put them in some of these situations.
He doesn't. It doesn't. After the first time, you're like, "What's he doing? What purpose does he
Like,
serve?"
what is so funny? Yeah, terrible.
Fantastic. All right, Jeffenstein. I'm going to ask you these questions, which will either grant or deny you access to TMS, aka the Midnight Society. Are you ready? I'm going to ask you these questions too, Drew and Stein.
All right.
Number 1, what's scarier, a vampire or a werewolf?
Vampire.
Vampire.
Why is that?
Both are predators.
Mm-hmm.
Both are contagious.
Mm-hmm.
Both are start as humans
Mm-hmm.
and who are cursed.
Mm-hmm.
But vampires are active, 365 yo.
Uh-huh.
they're undead, and they're just fucking creepy.
They are creepy, yeah.
Whereas werewolves are just awesome.
Yeah, werewolves are awesome. I'll go with you there. Drew?
Because from what I've seen of werewolves, once they're active, they're basically acting like animals, pure instinct. Whereas vampires, there's a type of intelligence, just like they, where they can think, where they can plan, where they can plot. And they show a certain level of higher brain function that werewolves don't.
So, same answer as Rachel. I say werewolves are scarier because a vampire can choose not to destroy you if it wants, whereas a werewolf is all animal instinct, and it just goes into a crazy rage, and it can't be killed unless you happen to have silver bullets. So if you encounter a vampire, there's a good chance you could talk your way out of it. If you encounter a werewolf, you're fucked, my friend.
The vampire could decide not to destroy you, but it won't, because it wants to suck your blood.
Vampires choose not to kill people all the time. Louis didn't kill the interviewer. And
Yeah,
there's another example that
He
can't
did.
really think. No,
he attacked him later.
No, he did not.
Yeah.
No.
He literally
Lestat
attacked him later. Oh, that's true. Lestat attacked him.
Boom! I win. Question number 2. Would you rather be a ghost or a zombie?
Zombie.
Ghost.
Ooh. Why, Jeff?
Because a zombie probably doesn't know what it's doing and will very quickly decompose and rot away.
Oh,
and
true.
its suffering will end.
I don't really like the idea of zombies because it seems like they have absolutely no control of themselves. And so, I mean...
Man, you guys are biased against no control people.
And I like ghosts because it's kind of like, well, you're basically yourself without the handicap of needing food, shelter, and warmth. And with all the powers of, like, going through walls and following people and
But you're
haunting
insubstantial. You can't affect anything. You're just a silent witness
Just like
forever.
Jacob Marley.
I'll be a poltergeist.
Ghost was Rachel's answer. I don't know what my answer is. I think probably ghost, because I could fly then, I think. Maybe. I could put up my spooks like a motherfucker.
You could definitely put up your
if I was a
spooks.
ghost. Question number 3, and the final question. Only need to answer 3 questions to enter TMS, a.k.a. the Midnight Society. Would you rather spend a night in a haunted house or a cemetery?
Cemetery.
Damn.
That's not an option.
Yeah, cemetery.
A haunted house establishes that ghosts are real and you are trapped with them.
Mm-hmm.
Cemetery establishes no such thing.
Yep.
It could just be a nice, peaceful park.
Yep.
I was thinking that a cemetery is the same thing, where if there is something there, you could see where it's coming from. And there's lots of open space and places to run. Whereas with a house that's already been declared haunted, you never know if the door open will lead you to the correct place. You don't know if there are other people there that you need to hide from. You don't know what kind of traps or whatever is in there. And it's enclosed. So escape would be that much more challenging.
Yeah, I never thought about the traps tripping aspect of the haunted house. Rachel's answer, cemetery. I think cemetery would be nice, except that Petey Wheatstraw probably would stumble by and kick dirt on you.
And then he'd start rhyming.
Yep. I say haunted house because I would go in and lick everything so that the ghost didn't want to go there anymore and they would leave. Because once you lick something, that's yours.
Do you know what the ghost would say?
Rerun for your life!